Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Skip Allen Paints. This is the YouTube channel of Skip Allen. This is the third in a series of videos about working with a very wet watercolor brush in Corel Painter 2015. Okay, so while I was gone, I went on and did an iterative save of the image, because I hadn't done that while I was on camera. And to do that, you go up to File, and you just click on Iterative Save. And what it does is it saves it with the same name that you started off with, but it adds a 001 to the end of it to let you know that it's the next save. Okay, so I have an iterative save. I'm going to lock the watercolor layer that I just finished, and I'm going to add another watercolor layer. Now, I like the fact that this is very long, and I like the fact that I'm going to have a very tiny little focal point here. But I don't want this to be too boring. I'd like it to be a little bit more activity, but not enough to take away from our focal point. So I'm going to go back to Skip's Real Watercolor. I'm going to I'm going to put the brush down, not quite black, but down some. And I'm going to come in and just bring in another spot here of mountain. And I want to vary the color some. It's going to cross over. Vary that a little bit. I'm trying not to get too much of a line there. And it's going to cross over the other mountain, this dark mountain there. But I think I like the way this is going to work. I'm not sure I like exactly what I did there, but let's let it render for a second. And while it's rendering, I'll pause. I'll be back in a second. Okay, it's finished. It's not too bad, but I really don't like it. So I'm going to go in and get rid of it. And we'll try doing it again. The darkness to be a little bit more in the top. Like I said, I don't want those lines to be quite so straight. So I'll bring them to the side a little bit. And if it didn't work this time, I have another trick that we can try. I'm liking this better. It's this thing right up there that I don't really like. So let's see. I don't think this is going to be dark enough to actually cover that. Let's just see what happens. Okay, I'll pause our video again. Okay, again, I'm back, and I like this better, but it's a little bit too dark. It needs to be a little lighter, somewhere between this tone and that tone, probably about like that. So let's take it off again and try one more time. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. Okay, let's see how that does. Hope we don't get too much at the top. Okay, I'm going to pause the video. Be back in a second. Okay, I think that's where I want to be. I'm going to bring the size of this down so that I can kind of see it as if I'm back from it. And I don't mind that long line there. I think that's okay. Because the focal point, I think, is going to be really strong. All right, so let's lock that layer, and we'll add another watercolor layer. And I'm going to go to another brush called Sumi Expressive Point. And this time I'm going to go back to black because I'm going to put in something right here. And what I'm going to put there is a very tiny tree. Not that big, not that tall. About like, let's make it a little smaller. About like that. And I'll make it a little bit bigger. Let's see how that looks. We need to bring this down a bit. It's got to be dark there. And that's what I want, but I'm not quite there yet. Let's take this off and we'll do it again. Okay, so I want a small tree. This bleeds out, so let's make our brush a little smaller. Ooh, not that tall, Skip. Can you make it a little straighter? No, you can't, apparently. I think that is pretty good. I want to darken this down here. Don't want there to be any light right where it is. I'm going to bring this up a little taller. Can't do that. That's about right. And I'm going to thicken this a little bit down here. Too thick? When you're working this small, everything is in degrees. That's still too thick. So what I probably need to do is come in closer here. All right, now we'll come back up here and make this a little bit thicker, but not as thick as I was making it. And I think that is what I want. It's pretty tall, but it's still fairly small, and it becomes a very strong focal point. Now, I want to wet this a little bit more. I'm going to get another brush called, what is it called? If I can find it, it's WC Pencil Blender Wet. And you can find this brush in the Splashing Water set. And I'm going to make it a kind of a light color. And the first thing I want to do is just lighten or wet. Oops. I've got to go to that layer, though, and I want to soften that line there. And so the layer is this layer. Take off the lock. And I'm just going to soften that line a little bit. And that didn't soften it, that darkened it. So let's go up a little lighter. I want it to run a bit. Oops. Control Y, put that back on. Let's go all the way up to white. It should soften that line a little more, but it's not. So I'll try another brush. Oh gosh, and I don't know if I can give you, let's see, yeah, I can try Loaded Water 7. That should do it. And let's take the opacity's way down on that. We're in white, so I should be able to soften that. I wasn't going to give you Loaded Water, but I guess I will. All it's doing is just lightening that line ever so slightly. Let me make sure it's at its default setting. We are on white, which it needs to be. Okay, that's about as good as we can do on that. And I want to dampen this just ever so slightly. I'm going to go back to Watercolor Pencil Blender and take a darker gray. And I want it to be real tiny. And I'm just going to let that run a little bit. Should run more than that. That's because I'm not on the layer. So let's go to the layer where the tree is. Okay, now it should affect it. Yeah, there we go. We're getting, it's ever so slightly, but that little bit of wetness that we get is much more authentic than what we had. I'm going to go to this darker layer as well. This one right here. Take the lock off. I'm going to make that brush a little bit bigger, and I'm going to soften that line as well. See how that just softens that? And I'll bring it down and let it soften this as well, so it keeps it from being quite so straight up and down, and gives a little more interest there. Needs to block that where it goes across. Okay, that looks better. And I'm going to pick this color right here. Sorry. And I'm going to try and soften this line. Wrong layer. Let's go up to this layer, take the lock off. Don't think I like that. Let's say just soften a little of it. No, that's not going to work. We're going to leave that the way it is. Now let's see how this looks. Okay, I think this looks kind of what I want. It's maybe not what I was expecting, but it's kind of what I want. So we're going to stop at this point, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do a little color adjustment to the image, give it a little more life. All right, talk to you in a few minutes. Bye-bye.